All right. So I think, very similar to Jen and I, a lot of our team comes from X retail. And, Jen, just confirming, you can see my screen here.
Sure can.
Perfect. I just got too excited and jumped right in. As I was saying, a lot of our team comes from X retail. So our two founders are actually Stanford grads, and they actually created an app, sold it to Walmart, and then in working at Walmart, they recognized that even a company of their size was still using Excel for planning. And Jen and I can attest, same thing over at TJX, or I think we had a system that nobody wanted to use. It was too convoluted, too slow to move. So our founders actually left Walmart to build out Toolio. And since then, Jen and I have the pleasure of speaking with a lot of you every day, discussing the Excel spreadsheets that you're working in. So we're seeing it across the industry that most teams are working in Excel or one of those older systems that they're starting to outgrow and need more flexibility. And those inefficiencies are leading to not only a ton of time wasted, but more detailed in a way that is affecting your inventory levels. So maybe missing stock or options on those best sellers, or overstocking in some of those lower goods that you could have reinvested somewhere else. So we're hearing a lot of teams now, especially as the holidays are quickly approaching, starting to think about how can we prevent this moving forward, and starting to look for a tool that not only integrates back to their current system, so those ERPs, those data warehouses that you spent months implementing, now using that information in a way that's actually actionable for a planning team. So using Toolio, you'll be able to connect back to all of those pre-set up systems that you have in a one end-to-end planning solution. So we'll do all of the top line merchandise financial planning all the way through down to allocation, which we'll see today. And of course, a ton of analysis between those steps. But the key product here is, all of those faster data-driven approach can really start to affect things like margin, turn, and of course, that huge time savings for the team. Jen, do you remember when we used to pull all those reports manually on a Monday morning? It was terrible.
I remember going in at 7 o'clock in the morning just to start pulling all the reports.
You know what? I was lucky. I was during COVID times, but I would still wake up. I actually was in San Francisco during that time. I was doing a road trip, and I would wake up at 4 a.m. to start pulling them. It was
Oh
terrible.
my goodness. But your blood, sweat, and tears into those reports.
Oh yeah, that men's underwear department turned fast because of me. I'll say that. But I think a way to prevent that for a lot of teams is starting to utilize all of that hard work they've put into their existing tech stack. So as we've talked about, planning is usually the start of that commerce stack, and it's still stuck in Excel. So it doesn't really play well with the rest of those tools you have. Maybe you have a PLM tool like Centric or WFX where you're designing the products. Those products then move into your ERP like a NetSuite, where you're starting to manage those purchase orders. You then go and you sell them on your e-commerce site like Shopify, and then do those analytics back in a BI tool like Looker. But then planning, it's in Excel. You're starting to navigate back over to a different system. It's not cohesive in that commerce stack that you have now. But we use all of these different systems to pull in that data, all of that product, sales, purchase order, and inventory data into Toolio here. So these are our 3 core modules that will connect back to that pre-existing tech stack that you have. So we like to think of it as one place for all of your planning activities. Of course, you can pick and choose which module works best for you. But what do you think, Jen? I think most customers, see value in each one of these modules.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely. Most teams get started in that merchandise planning module. That's where you start doing those top line financial plans, any of that reporting that you would pull on a Monday morning, that's automatically created for you there. You can also start to track how you're rolling up to your open to buy. And been hearing a ton of excitement around the what if scenario playing lately on what if we were to open a new store or expand this category? How does that affect the company as a whole? Then those top line decisions flow into the rest of the modules there. So key to have that top line approach. That goes into assortment planning, where you start to build out those assortments. You're taking into account things like core products that you have, newness that you're working on with the product team, and of course, a ton of rationalization is happening there to help you decide what those products should be, where they should go, and when they should be there. Then it comes into allocation. Jen and I, as previous allocation analysts, know how difficult and detailed that can be. So really excited to show you how automated our allocation system is based off of all of those predetermined decisions you made in the previous modules. What do you think, Jen? Does that kind of cover all the key workflows that a team typically needs?
Yeah, Gigi, I think you nailed it.
All right. That's what we're looking for, Jen.
Yeah.
So let's dive in.
Let's dive in.
Awesome. So I think, Jen will be able to gather any questions here in the chat. Jen, interrupt me. I know you always do. So jump in with any
I'll be
questions.
waiting.
She'll jump right in. So send Jen any questions in the chat. We'll either answer them as they're coming, or if I get talking, which I always do, we'll get them at the end. But we'll plan on covering those 3 modules that we just saw in the next 40-ish minutes or so. All right. So let's dive in. So as we kind of mentioned, Toolio is a web-based platform. So all of your data is living right here in the cloud. And I think it's great that it then starts to act as a central repository for all of the information you need for those merchandising decisions going forward. Trying to find that in Excel is a real pain. So all of this is going to live in Toolio moving forward, and then it's really actionable for your team. Would have died for these dashboards back in the day. The dashboards are configurable and they can be added as needed. So maybe you're looking at performance summaries up here. I know margin is top of mind for a lot of teams right now. Maybe you want to drill into more product level details and start to see those top 10 products of the week. Great place to come in and start to get a taste of the business for the week. Jen, what were you typically looking at on a Monday morning?
Oh man, I feel like everything. I feel like this would have saved me hours in the morning having to come in and doing all my analysis with 15 different systems. So I feel like this is just, I definitely could have gone and grabbed coffee my Monday morning beforehand had I had this.
I also think that they were not easy to digest here. So I was probably missing a lot of the trends that I was doing on my ladder plans and just highlighting them. So this is a great way to quickly look at the data from different perspectives on the fly and maybe miss some of those points that you wouldn't have seen in those manual polls that you were doing.
Yeah, my optometrist would be very thankful had I had this, not looking at my plans.
Definitely. All right. A new user here. We have the planning team, the buyers, and the optometrists who are really just keeping an eye on the team. You're right. Well, I think optometrists aside, merchandise planning is where a lot of those planning managers or top line reports are done for a bird's eye view of the team. So this is where maybe as a planning manager, you're going to spend a lot of your time and start creating those financial targets for the organization. I think a lot of teams will see how easy and simple this is to use and transfer over from Excel. So we'd like to make fun of Excel, but we all love Excel. We've all spent so much time in Excel. So all of those best parts of Excel, like copying and pasting, summaries, grid-like interface here, it's all carried over. So easily transferring over from Excel, but of course, layering on a much more robust planning framework from there. So diving in, some things you can expect to see on every screen here in Toolio. We have 200 plus different metrics, I believe. I would challenge you to find one that we don't have in the tool. Of course, you can come in and create your own, but things like margin, open to buy, any crucial KPIs, they're easily plugged into the system and then delineated with different variants on those. So plan, LY, LLY, if you have it available in your systems, quickly pull in any of those different data points that, I don't know, I was never good at putting together the formulas back in Excel. So great to be able to just quickly pull that in here. And from there, you can then start to play around with the different timeframes that you're looking at. So maybe if you're looking at a monthly level or you want to zoom out to the quarter, even maybe a 5-year approach, you can start to play around with the different dimensions of time here. Also,
I have a question real quick. Is it possible to create your own timeframes?
Jen, you're jumping the gun there. I was just going to say that the timeframes I've been hearing a lot lately that teams that have, big collections that they're dropping, they want to be able to look for, hey, I have this 2024 pre-fall collection. You can click into that and just see that specific unique time frame that doesn't really fall into a regular retail calendar. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Good question, Jen. Exactly. So lots of flexibility on the individual ways that your team wants to aggregate that data. And then I think within that, being able to flip around the hierarchy is key. So Jen, maybe your team is creating those collections for their different channels. Maybe they have a collection for brick and mortar and for e-commerce. they can start to play around with how do those bubble down to those specific departments or channels there. So we see clothing across web, across store, and across wholesale. So we're starting to see a big delineation between how those different departments are being affected across the channels. So tons of flexibility on how you're looking at the data that you just don't have in Excel. Right? So that's some typical functionality you can expect to see across the platform. From there, you might want to start creating a plan. A planning manager might come in and want to start seeding in a plan for 2025. Let's just do the whole year of 2025. Of course, you can do that same level of granularity we just did. And I want to take the actuals and plans from this year. So anything that's actualized moving forward automatically updates in the system, and I'm using that information to now create my plan moving forward. I put a weight of up 25 because I was just talking to our CFO earlier, and she's starting to see that we're expecting a 20% lift across the company, or that's what she's challenging us to do. So now I can go over to my 2025 plan year and start to make individual tweaks to that scenario. Of course, that 20% lift respected the contribution curves and any prior historical peaks and valleys that we had in the data. But as a planning manager, I know there are some unique tweaks that I'm going to have to make. Let's see here. So I'm going to lock that up 20%. That's what I'm contributing to, or committing to rather, across the year. And let's say, for example, in my web, I'm going to do a promotion in September on footwear. And I think that's going to give us a little bit of a bump in our sales. I can come in, put that bump up. It will then spread that mix across the rest of the hierarchy, respecting that up 20% we locked into the total plan. You can come in and start to see what cells were adjusted there with that blue caret. So of course, footwear was adjusted. It brought rest of those months down to start building up the inventory there in September, and then smoothing out after the promo. So starting to play around with those individual changes that only a planning manager on your team would be able to predict. And then starting to, maybe I come in and I save that with a comment, and I can start to compare all of those different scenarios that the team is running. So in August, we have an influencer campaign coming. In July, we're doing another promo with accessories. So we're starting to play around with what do those different scenarios look like before we then come into and merge those into our master scenario. The master is, something that you're going to stick to and commit to throughout the rest of the season. So we think of the scenarios as the playground to test out what could be before you merge them into the master in what will be there.
So if you accidentally merge something you're not supposed to, or you change something and you're like, oh crap, what happened? Is it a way to see the history of your changes on these scenarios?
Absolutely. So you can, save those with the comment there, but of course you can also start to come in here and see, oh, looks like you've been playing around in here, Jen. You can start to see, what different options or changes were made. So you can step back and see how we got there. I think, Jen, that also prompts me to remind you about the, you can take a screenshot of your scenarios, which is basically, you could see what this scenario was at a moment in time before it started to have additional changes made on it as well. Awesome. Anything else from your end, Jen?
It looks like we actually have a question. Do you offer any data cleansing activities? Do you build time into a project to ensure the data is clean prior to loading?
Yeah, that's a good question, Heidi, and something we've actually been talking about a lot with the team. We do build in time for the team to prepare and improve their data during the process. And it's something that we talk through during the sales process. So we do a call where we talk about what does your data look like, where are we pulling it from in the system, and make any suggestions to get your data in the right place before onboarding. And then during onboarding, we typically budget around 4 to 10 weeks, depending on the size of the team, for that actual integration work, making sure that the hierarchy, for example, is in the place that the team needs to be. So I'll say that it depends on, the state of the data and where our team can start to advise you on where we see some improvements to be made. Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Oh boy, Jen, I got to move a little bit quicker here. I'm going to move into assortment planning now, so we can start to see at least my favorite part of the tool before we run out of time here. So that's merchandise planning. That's where you do all of those top line financial plans. Then those top line financial plans are moved over into the assortment plan. So this is, a quick view, a quick gallery view of what the assortment is starting to look like. If I want to move into my grid view here, for example, I can see all of the products in the assortment. Right now, these are just my in-season core SKUs. So this boiled wool charcoal jacket lives in this 2024 holiday assortment year over year. I can start to see how those core products then roll up to those plans we just set. So, God, Jen, it looks like we have a little bit of shopping to do. We are very far behind our planned unit goal. So, our core products only roll up a portion of that. Being a fashion heavy company in this instance, we have a lot of new products to plan. Before we do that, though, I did want to just point out that those core products, each product will individually have a demand plan created for it. So this is amazing for a planner myself, having this demand plan automatically created out into the foreseeable future for you is amazing as we start to automate out those core product replenishment there. I love though that the planner can come in and make changes as they see fit. So you can see from an original plan perspective, compare that to how it's actualizing. Maybe you need to start putting in some limits or minimum order quantities, presentation profiles. Those can all be layered in here to control the output of these demand plans. But awesome. So all of those core products, they have a demand plan created right into them. So you can start to anticipate when those peaks and valleys are coming, when to place those new POs. And then the fun stuff really starts to begin. Building out that new assortment, we start to do a ton of rationalization here. So what that really means, we take that historical data and start to cleanse it for anomalies, maybe weeks where you had products out of stock, for example. The goal of that is to help cut off the long tail of that assortment by identifying products that didn't really contribute to the assortment, and you could actually, cut off that extra SKU count to reallocate those dollars elsewhere. So as you're starting to build out new SKUs, the assortment rationalization is crucial here on telling you where to invest and then also how deep to invest. So as we start to look at those budgets and understand where the assortment needs to grow by, we can then recognize how productive those SKUs need to be to hit those financial targets. Let's see, for example, here, our men's web division, the system's actually suggesting that we need to have an additional choice count here to hit those top line goals we just set, given that up 20%. Of course, the planner can come in here and play around with the width and depth of that assortment to be more comfortable with the number of options and the productivity that each choice is offering. So the system's going to suggest where you should live in your assortment, how deep and how wide it should be, and then you can come in and start to play around with the unique needs of an assortment at the planner level. So Jen, we've just cleaned up all of that data. How were you doing that in the past at TJX? Were you doing any pre-season or post-season rationalization there?
Yeah, and unfortunately it was all done in Excel, so it was chaotic and messy.
Definitely. At least you made an attempt. I don't think in my department we ever really were able to find the time to go back and fill in the gaps of the assortment. So year over year, we were kind of repeating the mistakes of the previous year. So I love that the rationalization here can come in, anticipate where you could have had more sales, for example, if you had the SKUs or the units available to you. So now we're looking at what could have been assortment, and we can come in and start to build up a successful assortment for that in the future. So as you remember, we have those core products. We have a lot of units to place. So I'm going to come into our compare mode here. As we talked about, that's pulling in from all of those systems. Maybe you're on NetSuite, like 60, 70% of our customers are. You come in, pull in all of that historical data from NetSuite, start to do those analyses on which products do we want to repeat or make a new rendition of, for example. I love this black Blake jacket here. I'm a big leather fan myself. So, I, for example, want to just repeat that product. It was a product that we offered on this same seasonal basis last year. It was a hit. We're going to carry it forward again. You can also extend a product that was living in the previous season that you want to carry forward. So maybe it was in the fall, we're extending it into the winter. Or you might want to do a like for like. So, I love this Blake jacket. The rest of the team's pushing for a rendition of that, maybe in a new color, a new sleeve length, a new pattern. You can start to have that placeholder there to allow the team to then come in and start communicating around what that new product should be. But it carries over all of that sales information, all of that selling curves, the product presentation. So you can start to use or benchmark off of all of last year's hard work on that product to create those plans moving forward. Awesome.
We have a question here from Lee. You kind of covered a little bit, but I don't know if you can go in depth a little bit more on how are placeholders utilized in this model? How are choices then mapped back to a placeholder when finalized?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if the style bank will kind of answer that question there. So, Lee, we just created one of those placeholders. That's a way for the team to hold, we need a new product, but we don't know what it's going to be yet. We find that a lot of teams that use a PLM or not, but mostly typically we have a PLM Connect here where we then pull in all of the products that the product team is developing. And then you can easily just drag that product into that new product that we just created, which I actually didn't. Let me go back and start to create that. So effectively, we create that new product with the like for like placeholder, and then we can drag that in from the PLM to replace that with it. So I think the style bank, Jen, it has been great for teams to start to communicate back with the product team on planning says we need this new product. Product has been planning a gray version of that leather jacket that I loved. Now we can combine the two and connect those SKUs together.
Yeah, that's great, Gigi.
Awesome. So that's kind of how we're starting to build out those new products. Of course, as you're doing that, you're seeing that reconciliation process continue to remind you how much more you need to close the gap. And in the background, all of those demand plans are being created for each product. So you're closing that gap between the financial targets and planning forward-looking demand plans for those items right here in the assortment planning module.
Question, does this export POs as well?
It does, yep. So any of those, based on those demand plans, of course, you're going to start to need to order those products. All of those products come out here in the recommended purchase orders screen. So you can start to see when we need to place those orders. And if you are using NetSuite, for example, push that direct into NetSuite from there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Jen, I remember how we used to handle POs with the buyers back in the day. It was, I'm surprised they didn't make more mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. It was scary and my palms started to sweat a lot having to go through it. So
You get that checked out, Jen. No, I'm kidding. No, definitely working with the buyers is always scary on if you're going to add another zero or not. So exactly, everything's coming from all of that predetermined planning you've done at the demand plan level for those SKUs directly into those purchase orders with any MOQs or lead times that you need to account for there. Great topic to help move right over into allocation, though. That's the last step in the process of executing out on that assortment. So for a reminder, we did the merchandise planning. That's where we set those top line targets. Those top line targets then flowed into the assortment planning module where we created that assortment. We built up our core products, brought in our new items, and we decided, what product we're going to have, where the product's going to go, and when it's going to be available. And now we're actually going to allocate those products to your brick and mortar locations and then continue to replenish in season. No point in doing all of that work if we can't get it to the customer. So right here in our allocation module is the effect of all of those previous decisions we made. In this screen here, you can start to see our top line allocation outputs. So for example, I can see across the 12 stores that I have here, any level of granularity, how much inventory will be living in each store. So for example, knits in store 5 is getting 212 or will sell 212 units this week. So this is a quick read on the allocation strategies throughout the week. Of course, we have to set those strategies up for the system to then be able to action on. So back here in the allocation strategy page is where you'll do that. you're going to decide things, like what is the product? Where is or when is the product going to be available and where? All of these decisions can, of course, carry over from the assortment planning module that we just created. But I wanted to point out you can use allocation on its own. So if your team is really store heavy, you want to make those decisions just here in the allocation module. You don't need assortment planning to do that. But of course, it's much more powerful bringing in those demand plans directly from assortment planning. Either way, you can come in here and start to drill into what do one of those allocation strategies look like. So just like we saw for the total store level, we can also see at the individual product level, how many extra smalls are they going to get across the next 9 weeks. I think it's great too how you can start to see, store 1 is going to get more than, let's see, store 11 here, who is not getting any of this product. So you start to see the power of the clustering start to work through here as you look at the individual SKUs and starting to really drill down into, at the size level, how many is this store going to get? Of course, if you start to recognize, hey, there are adjustments I want to make. I love that not everything operates or nothing operates in a black box here. So the users can come in and start to make adjustments to that strategy. Let's see, for example, I know presentation profiles have been the talk of the town lately, making sure that even if it is store 11 and they're going to get less units, we want to make sure that they have the minimums for a beautiful presentation that our merchandising team has been working on. So you can put in those presentation profiles. You can put in things like holdback percentages or push out all of your inventory. So lots of changes that an allocation analyst can start to make to adjust those strategies. Of course, then you can come in and rerun and see how those strategies have adjusted and understand their impact to the organization from there. Awesome.
How far in advance can you make these allocation strategies?
Jen, that's a great question and something I was going to touch on. I love that you can set this up right away. So right when you know when you're going to have the product available, even if it's 6-8 months in advance, you can create those strategies. So I know, at TJX, we had to work Saturdays during the holidays to get these allocation strategies out and manage them. You can do all of this months in advance.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. It's nice to be able to kind of handle it more on an exception management base than, hand holding every SKU in season.
Definitely. We also have another question from Mike. Does allocation support pack allocation versus individual items?
That's a good question, Mike. And, something I've been hearing about a lot lately. I'll have to take that back and talk through, how we're handling those pre-packs versus how we're assorting or allocating the individual SKUs. Definitely something we've been hearing about a lot lately.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and write that down too, Gigi, so we make sure to go back to it.
We'll bug Peter about it. That's awesome. Cool. So, yep, packs and individual SKUs we'll get back to you on and discuss more so around how, at the more granular level, we're planning those individual SKUs. But also, there's a ton of analysis you can do here as well around that where that SKU movement is happening. So I love that, for example, you can start to see, of course, that plan that we had earlier, start to see the initial outputs of how things are turning. But we have reports on, what is the color penetration across your stores? How many units of, footwear versus bottoms do you have? So you can start to get a quick look into stores without actually physically being there, which I know is a huge part of the job. Go into the store, start to recognize, crap, we're really over penetrated in black here. How did this happen? So you can start to see how is this experience in the store starting to be recognized virtually here. And then, of course, making those adjustments as you see fit. But the allocation plan here is going to automate out all of that allocation for you. And of course, starting to optimize full price sell through across the life of the product by ensuring it's in the right place at the right time. So great automation here in the allocation module, all because we did all of that hard work back in the previous 2 modules. So we started in merchandise planning, created those top line financial plans. We went into assortment planning, created the assortment and decided where and when that product's going to live. And then the allocation module took those predetermined decisions, started to pull the units into that, and then optimize the demand for those units moving forward. But Jen, I know of course, there's so much more to dig into. We have things like promotion management, we optimize size curves, we do the automated clustering. So this is a quick taste, but of course, there's still so much more we can jump into on a more tailored call if anyone has more questions.
That's awesome. I think we've gotten all the questions too, Gigi. So
Oh,
thank
wow. Oh my God. I talked quite fast there. Sorry, guys. We have 10 minutes to spare. Sorry if I just rambled, but of course, if there's any questions, definitely send them our way. Any other questions that you're seeing on your end, Jen?
No, I think, oh, hold on. What reporting capabilities are in the tool? That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, we build in reporting at any step of the way. So I prefer to look at it from the report or the dashboard side. So these are easily configurable. You can start to create your own reports here as you see fit. The product details side is great where you can start to see bestsellers and start to see, okay, bags are doing well, and then take that information and action on them moving forward. But of course, each individual module also has specific reports pre-built in as well. I do want to point out, anything with this lock comes directly from the Toolio team. So these are reports that we see our customers using as a best practice that we want to share with everyone. So for example, this top line gross to net report is something that we find a lot of teams are looking at on a Monday morning to get a glimpse into top line sales and start to see where movement has picked up or slowed down. So reporting built into those dashboards, merchandise planning, assortment planning, and allocation, I'll say that they kind of work like big pivot tables. So if you have the information available to you, we can come in and start to slice and dice that data in a variety of different ways.
Awesome. And then I'm seeing that we're getting asked about the item plan too. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that as well,
Yeah,
Gigi.
good question. And something you might have noticed if you've seen a previous demo of ours, we have recently merged assortment planning and item planning together. So it used to be assortment plan and item plan separate. Now they live together. That item planning piece are those demand plans that the system is creating out for you. So nothing additional to show in item planning. That's all happening in assortment planning, and this is something we'll be depreciating soon. But as you go into our new assortment planning module, the item planning will then happen down to that individual SKU level. So as we talked through, each item in here has a core or has a demand plan built out for it. The system's automating this out for you, but of course you can come in and start to make adjustments to this as well. But this is a quick visualization of what those demand plans start to look like that you would have done previously in our item planning module.
So beautiful. I think that's it for all of our questions right now, Gigi.
Cool. Yeah, great question around the item planning because I think it's a unique twist that we've started to think through on a holistic assortment here. So core and seasonal are not living separate anymore. They're all in one holistic assortment where everything is starting to look at across seasons, across time frames. So all of your SKUs are recognized in one module here. So no delineation between core and seasonal anymore, which, from a customer perspective, it's not seen that way either. So I love this new update.
Perfect. And then Mike, also, we'll be sure to get back to you on that question about the allocation supporting pack and individual items as well.
Absolutely. I'm eager to hear the answer to that as well.
Perfect.
Cool. Well, Jen, I'm curious, what's your favorite part of the demo?
As a previous allocator myself, I think I like going into allocation.
Really? Yeah, maybe I'm
First.
from being an allocation analyst. I love the gallery view. I think it's great to be able to see what does the assortment look like and then make tweaks and changes here. I
Yeah.
actually ship men's outerwear, and it would be really nice to be able to change around the launch dates here as you're starting to visualize the different weights of the jackets, for example. So I'm
Yeah,
more
it reminds me of that 10 hanger game we used to do where you pull 10 hangers off the shelves and that's what your assortment is and you got to evaluate that. So this is just a nice visual way to see it.
Oh, it was always awful to have somebody send you a picture of a heavyweight jacket in Arizona in the middle of the summer. It's like,
Yeah.
how did that through? So it's great to see it more visually here. Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you all for jumping in. Would love to hear, what you enjoyed most about the demo, or, what I could brush up on more. So definitely, you should be able to reach out to us after the demo, and we will be sure to send out this recording to yourself and anyone else on your team that you need to share out with, and we'll be in touch, or you'll be receiving an email from the Toolio team with this recording.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us. It was great hearing you all, and we'll be sure to be up on the screen again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Bye.